Hey everyone, welcome back to the CGMW class. This is actually the Environment 2 class now, and so this is pretty much going to be a nice continuation from the first section, and I believe most of you who are taking this class have taken the first class as well. So, I should still introduce myself to any of you guys who don't know who I am. I'm James Paick, your instructor. What else? Concept artist, work in games and film for about the past, let's see, probably like 7 years. I work mostly in video games as a environment concept artist. I have worked in-house at multiple studios, but now have started my own company as a subcontracting company that does, concept art for many different studios. So, let me just first start out by kind of going over what the class is going to be about. As you guys know, the first class was heavily devoted to, trying to get the use of Photoshop, digital painting, and then starting to get into a little bit of design work at the end of the course. Now, this course is we're going to try to speed things up in terms of the design process. So what's going to happen is we have a general course outline. The first week we're basically just going to be going over, just a general review, color, composition, theory, such and such, and then immediately after that jump into a design project, something that you might get in terms of an assignment if you worked inside of a studio. So I could show you guys some work right now as well. Got to be careful what I show. A lot of the stuff, basically, yeah, all this stuff is safe. So let me show you guys some more Uncharted 2 work. I know you've probably have seen some of this before, but one of the things that's important is when you have a design assignment, it's really important to just understand the purpose of the design, understand the purpose of what you're working on and how that applies to the project. Previously, in Environment 1, we were mostly just worried about the artistic approach, getting the composition, getting the color down, being able to paint a representative image of what you wanted it to be, to look like. And one of the things that's really important is that, we have to make our paintings look good. We have to make them look realistic, have good lighting, good sense of, composition and tone and mood. And with the way things are going with gaming these days, they're becoming so realistic that the artist now has to push that realism to the next level. So, being able to use textures, making things look like you can actually touch them and feel that they're made of metal or wood or whatever is actually really, really important, because now all of that information can be input into the games. It's not just for the art purpose anymore. So if we can pick up, take it up a notch in terms of how real that we can get, that's always a plus. The second thing now is that now we have to worry about design. A good concept artist, in my opinion, is one who can paint realistically, can be still stylized, but, has a good sense of their artistic ability, but also has that really strong sense of design, and design is something that does take a while, in my opinion, to develop. But we have concept artists always use a foundation of certain design theories, shape language, and approach it that way. That's usually very, very, very helpful. So, in my opinion, one of the best things that we could do is, we'll start off slow. We'll have the whole basic week 2 to week 8 be completely just about the design process and your design project. So here are some of the things that I wanted to show you from Uncharted 2. Now, I know you guys have probably seen this before. They've been out for a while. But one of the things that's important is I have to understand what this location is about. Now, this location here was mostly taken place in Tibet, like a village at the foothills in Tibet. And it's very important for me to start to understand what the culture is about, what their design language, what kind of design language they use, what kind of materials they use. And obviously we know that Tibet is a very cold place. They use a lot of natural resources, not a lot of natural raw materials. So I had to make sure that everything that I had in here had that kind of sensibility to it. Very homely, and had a nice sense of culture to it. Here's some of the things that a good concept artist, in my opinion, should really be able to do. Now, if we look at this room, it's very easy to tell that this is a room. You have a door, you have a window, you have some steps or storage compartments. That's all fine. Those are the really big shapes, and portraying the big shapes are very simple and actually are very easy. The hard part is, what do you do with all the rest of the space? How do you come up with other elements, props, set dressing, filling in the space with materials and props and just little trinkets and things like that? That's what really makes a concept art more believable. So for example, just thinking about what are the walls made of, what are the architectural structure, how are those made? Support beams. You have other support elements over here, windows, and you have pots of water. You have other plates laying around, pots hanging on the wall, fabric hanging. Maybe they're drying, or maybe they're there to help insulate the location. So there's a lot of things that we can do to get that point across. Here's another room. This is more specific to a certain person that's a character in the game. So this person is going to have a couple of things in their room that are a little bit more personalized, such as this little kind of temple area where he can kneel and he prays, a picture of his wife or whatever, some candles. And the way you arrange furniture around certain areas, the fabric, some of the materials on the wall are a little bit different than this previous place. Okay, this might be more of like a storage room, and this one over here, we could start really thinking about some design in this place. Now, this next image is the reverse side of the same room. You still have the temple area in the picture. Now his sleeping quarters. What is that going to look like? A raised bed. Maybe there's more pillows on the ground. Just more personalized items that we can think about. Now, trying to paint this realistically and having it have a nice sense of lighting and detail, those are things that we can always practice and probably have really developed in the first course. So this is going to be a really nice second section to the course, is just really thinking about design while painting every day. Your painting ability is going to get stronger regardless. So we just need to make sure that we have a strong focus, because one of the best things to have good concept art is a good story. So that's what we're also going to be developing, some strong storylines, and have enough work to hopefully make your own standalone portfolio based off of this project. So here's some more. I was thinking about maybe they channel water somehow, and it comes out of this little channel and into this big bucket. So just having some fun. This is probably the area where there's a pot maker, a pottery maker. So again, always just thinking about design, materials, also compositionally with the lighting. This area becomes more of the hot spot, focal point. So just kind of a general location here. So now hopefully you guys will be looking at this artwork differently than when you did in the first time. You're maybe looking at it in the first time and thinking, oh, okay, it's painted like this, and there's some lighting, and this is the value structure, and blah, blah, blah. But now, hopefully, you guys are looking more in terms of, okay, where is he putting the details, and what kind of details is he putting around? How is he, designing around the shape language of the people in Tibet? And there's a ton of photo reference of people in Tibet and their villages and whatnot, and just basically using what I see in the photos, using that as a basis, but now trying to push the design slightly more to be a little bit more oriented towards video games, because we want to push the concepts as much as possible. An interior view, some more of a interior hut. Now this one's in color. Now you can start to see, if you want to make something lived in, it cannot be perfectly organized. If you want something to feel real, it can't be perfectly clean. That's like one of the biggest pet peeves I have with any movies or projects that I see where they say, okay, this town has been around for centuries and it has a lot of history, and you're supposed to go in there and meet some old man to unlock a key to some special place. And when you go to that town, it's perfectly immaculate. There's no cracks on the walls, there's no dirt, there's no trash. That doesn't make any sense at all. So if you want some place to be lived in, you have to give it that personal touch of putting some trash on the ground, laying things on the floor, just a picture hanging on the wall that's not perfectly straight, it's not perfectly level. Just little areas where you can stack things, those become areas where they feel like they're being lived in, so something to pay attention to. So here's actually an example of what we're going to be doing in the class. So this was an assignment for, just a general train location. I wanted to do an overview shot where we get to see the whole train station. You get to see the surrounding environment. You get an idea of the lighting, so on and so forth. This next image here is an actual call-out design for the water tower that's at the bottom right over here. And this becomes a very important part of the gameplay because, you have to climb up on it and you have to zip line all the way down. And as he zip lines down, he's going to end up where all these trains are and eventually maneuver his way through all that to get to this warehouse. So that's the water tower. Now here's another image of the warehouse that he's about to go into, and a reverse angle, the back of the warehouse here. So if I kind of go back, if I track back to this image, what's important to see is the overview, some detailed props, a closer in image of the specific building. And they wanted to see the reverse side as well, so that's that. But just to keep in mind that it's very, very important, number one, to understand where your character is going. What's the purpose of this piece? This piece is to show that the character is going from the water tower, zipping line down the water tower, into the door. What are the surrounding elements? Does it feel claustrophobic? Are you supposed to feel like you're hiding? So all of those little emotions and things like that, like he's supposed to be hiding, he's sneaking around. It's important to make your image feel that way too. The image will help portray that mood as also, and other things. Set dressing, all the wires, thinking about dirt, debris, wear and tear. Weathering, so all these little details that are on the wall, just dirt and streaks and rust, maybe broken windows, and all the stuff that's back here, towers, telephone poles, a ton of wires, that all helps create that space. So something to think about when we start getting into the design process. Here are just some more exploration images. Some drawings, probably won't do too much of that. So this is purely a set dressing exercise. Now, when we're talking about set dressing, the important part really is to think about, put yourself in a place, even maybe, so this is a bar, even maybe go to a bar or go to wherever the location is that you're trying to, design, and just look around and see all the crazy things that people have accumulated and decorated their place over the years. And there's a ton of stuff that we will never think about, but will help create the ambiance of the place realistically. So try to remember that kind of stuff. Some more imagery. Now, there's a lot of developmental images that people go through to come up with, a design. So let me see if I can dig up some examples here. So these are just developmental images over here. This is just the Shangri-La area. Wanted to take a twist and use a bunch of these dried up roots that are just encasing all of the structures and architecture around that area. So, before any of that gets really done, I've done a ton of sketches and showed the art director, and once there was a language that spoke to the art director, he'll say, okay, James, this is a good direction, let's go in this direction now. And I came up with this image. So let's keep on going. So the train wreckage area, it's all about set dressing, and you got to realistically plan out, okay, if a train did wreck, what are some of the parts that would break off easily? What are some of the things that wouldn't break off easily? Where would junk and debris pile up? How would the snow pile up together? Where would we see some of these drag marks on the ground? So those are important things to remember. And also, that's part of your design. That's what you got to do to make it feel real. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but a lot of the time with me, especially when I was a student and many years working as a professional, there were times when my concept art just felt like it just scratched the surface. It wasn't anything real, It didn't have that realistic sense. It was just, decent paintings, but it didn't have that sense of realism to it. Now, once I got into understanding, okay, you really have to start to analyze how to decorate things, where to place things in an order where, it feels real. Then I started to get a lot more information out of it. So we want to think about this in a sense of three phases. So the first phase is, let me just bring up this piece. The first phase is to understand where we are and the big shapes. So we're in the mountains, we're in the snow, and there's a big train wreck. Okay, that's stage one. Number two, how are we going to lay out the way things are damaged? How are we going to place these train cars in and around the environment to make them feel like it's being wrecked? So now it's about laying out the space. Okay. Then number three, the last step is now let's break it down smaller. Smaller shapes. Now we're thinking about bits of snow. We're thinking about debris. We're thinking about plants, trash. We're thinking about pile-ups. Anything, dirt. So those three phases we're thinking about big, medium to small shapes. Pretty much the same way that I've lectured about how to approach a painting. So thinking about big, these major things, the big is just the overall scene. The medium is going to be, the train cars, the tree over here, another train car over here, the characters. And the small shapes, step three, is looking at the wheels over here. You have some of the suspension components from the train, more suspension components. You have dirt, snow, indicating a big heavy thing has maybe hit this area and bounced over here, leaving exposed dirt. So that becomes, the 1, 2, 3. So within a design process, there's many things that we could think about, but the same rule applies when you're talking about concept art, painting, design. Always try to use the rule of three. Big, medium, and small is always a really, really good way to do it. So that's always really good. Let me open up Photoshop here, and I'm actually gonna bring in my brushes over here. Now, one of the things that's going to be slightly different from the first class is there's going to be a little bit less demo. One of the main reasons for that is because you guys have had a pretty great amount of success with your paintings and development of your paintings, and honestly, there's only so much that I can do before you start to develop that on your own. So really try to push forward, try to discover new things, maybe take classes from other instructors or workshops or whatever, because the more you get information from different sources, what's good about that is that you can then basically take the information that really applies to your liking, and that becomes a huge way to, a great way to develop your own way of working. Now, when I was a student, I had, many, many instructors teaching different things, different process and whatnot, and, I always had the habit of, okay, I like the way this instructor teaches this, and I like the way this other instructor teaches another thing, and I'll take those two kind of learning lessons and put them together to kind of develop a way that I like to work. So then that becomes a really good way to do that. Another thing to do is, after this course, if you have some downtime or whatever, is try to come up with your own design project. Maybe use this class as a developmental exercise to understand how to do some more personal work. Now, personal work is great because you art direct yourself. You basically are in charge of the way things go. It's a really good way to push yourself to develop high-level art, to be used in your portfolio. And I try to do that as well. So today we're just going to be going over basic composition notes again, just as a review. And I want to, let's see over here. I want to try to get just a general overview and talk about some notes so that we can, basically jump into our design process for the next week. So let me see, that folder's empty. Let me see. Okay, let me just find this file really quick. Okay, now found the file. Sorry about that, guys. Just a quick review. Okay, and brushing up on this stuff is always good. So environment, painting, concept art, whatever you want to call it, 1.85 to 1 aspect ratio, all the way to a 2.35 is great. Now, remember, this stuff are just general outlines. They're not set in stone rules. Now, the more comfortable you become with these rules, the more you should try to push yourself to almost break the rules. Now, the only way you can break the rules is if you have a very strong, very, 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 very strong understanding of these rules to begin with. So probably at this point right now, it's best to stick with these rules, but once you want to start challenging yourself, rules are meant to be broken at times, so give it a shot. Third breakdown method. So breaking down our canvas into thirds, always a great idea. Ideal first focal point areas, great over here. Now what's possible for me to do? Pick number one, my focal point is going to be over here. Now break apart another area of my composition in the red, or using blue. So this blue creates another box over here. Another third breakdown using another number 2 as a secondary focal point. And breaking apart this area over here, creating a third focal point. 1, 2, 3 has good separate nice spacing, also a hierarchy of what's also important. Number 1 being the most important, number 2 second, and number 3 being the least important. Now we come up with this basic S-line movement through our composition using those 3 dots. And that helps us create a nice movement for the viewer to look at, to basically look throughout your whole painting. Now if we are smart about what we do, about what we put in these areas, then that's perfect. So that's just a basic review for that. Now values, we're always working in value, even though it's in color. You change anything from color into black and white, you have pure value, but the way that we paint in color is based off of value. Okay, we're just adding temperature to those values. So if we are able to use, have just a better sense of value, it helps our color. They go hand in hand together. So basic value range, we have 1 through 10 being from white to black, but our realistic use of color or value range is going to be from 2 through 9. Now 2 through 9 is more the mid value range. I would say 10 and 1 you want to use very little, maybe for accents or highlights or things like that, but never to use as a majority part of your value structure. There's too much contrast. Now a way to organize our values is to break them up into 3 simple sections. Light, medium, and dark helps us organize that very, very simply and effectively. Now this last one over here is an exercise to break apart our value structures. Now a lot of you guys were doing very well, the ones who were doing the first section of the class. Very, very well. So one thing to keep in mind is third value breakdowns. A third of this area is light and 2/3 of it is dark. This is the opposite. 1/3 dark, 2/3 light. It helps us create a nice balance of dark and light shapes, because we do not want to have 50-50. We don't want our exactly half of the composition to be dark, half of it to be light, etc., etc. So giving it a third breakdown is always a very nice way to do it. Now more composition notes over here. Foreground, middle ground, background. Very, very easy to do, but hard sometimes to come up with different different varieties and different compositions. Now, this is where you want to push yourself the most, especially when you start doing thumbnails. It's really important to just get as much variety as possible out of your thumbnails. Maybe 4 to 5 thumbnails or whatever. Choosing different camera angles, different intimacy levels with your environment, being a wide open shot or a very tight in, almost claustrophobic shot. So with these foreground, middle ground, and background layers, we have foreground, middle ground, background, and now we can start inserting sub-layers in between the foreground, middle ground, and background, creating multiple layers of foreground, multiple layers of midground, multiple layers of background. So that becomes pretty straightforward, and I think most of you guys got a good handle on that. Now, here is the painting based off of the really bad sketch that was just shown earlier. Now, we have value contrast, small shapes, loose edges, overlap, value control, dark foreground, lighter background. These are the rules that I like to follow basically on every painting. Is you need to have the value contrast to create, focal points. You need smaller shapes to also help the eye gravitate towards the indication of details. Loose edges in the background to really create some nice atmosphere, creating tighter edges more into your focal point. Overlaps are one of the best ways to create the best sense of space. If you do not use overlapping, it becomes almost impossible to show what might be in front of something else. So always try to use overlapping in a very, in your painting. So it definitely helps out. Value control, dark foreground, as things.